Hey, brother, is goat beef here? And by popular demand, also known as I got one comment asking me to cover Khabib's recent words on Arman Sarukian versus Ilia Topuria about how he believes that Arman has the advantage everywhere the fight is and how he gives Ilia like a 20% chance. And I wasn't going to speak on it until I woke up and I found out that Usman Nurmagomedovs been talking some shit as well, man. He's been talking shit about Ilia Topuria's resume, talking real crazy. So I said, all right, now I got to do it. Right now I have two examples and a recent example. So now this gives me an excuse to now go back, right, and take a look at what Khabib had to say, right? But let's get into the Usman statement first.
Topuria, how he can be lightweight #1 in the world? He cannot be. He did only one fight. I have 19 fights in lightweight.
Brother, how he be #1 lightweight in the world? Just because he is champion at lightweight in the UFC, which is premier organization? What? That is outrageous. Outrageous, bro. And with this fucking logic, just volume of fights is all that matters. In that case, Jim A10 Miller and Clay Guida are the fucking goats of lightweight, man. They have like 40 something fights and 30 fights respectively. Usman, this guy's talking about I have 14 fights at lightweight. Yeah, fucking Bellator and PFL, you goofball.
And undefeated.
I have 25. Now, like, I beat former champions, I beat champions, and I think my resume is like better than him. He have only 15 or 14? 13? How many fights he have?
I think 14. I think that's the number.
Yeah, but I have 14 finished in my career.
So I won't even entertain comparing their resumes because obviously everyone knows that is just untrue. But I find it interesting what he had to say about, but this guy has how many fights and I have this many finishes? Yeah, you have 14 finishes and you've gone to decision 5 times. Ilia Topuria has more finishes than you and he's fought less. So what are you on about? He just finished Charles Oliveira, Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, right? Not in that specific order, but he just finished them back to back to back. And what is that? No contest. Wait, like Ilia doesn't have a no contest on the record? Dude, he really does have Ilia beat, man. Like surely that no contest can't be down to some form of cheating, right? Banned substances? No way, man. We gotta look into this real quick. I need to vindicate Usman Nurmagomedov. This is too much to take in. Brother, what is this? You mean he was banned for 6 months after testing positive for banned substances? But you wanna know the funniest part about it too? Honestly, through my research, the funniest part about this is that Usman Nurmagomedov, after being banned for 6 months for testing positive for a banned substance, he wasn't even stripped of his title. He wasn't even stripped. This man was not stripped. He was banned, he was fined, but he wasn't stripped. Anyone find that to be interesting? And this is honestly, like, when we get down to it, this is the reason why I go so hard after the Nurmagomedovs. Like the Dagestani fighters on their own aren't really an issue to me. I love fighters like Muslim Salikov, for example, right? But the Nurmagomedovs and the people surrounding the Nurmagomedovs are probably the most privileged fighters of all time. Like, let's not forget that Islam also tested positive in the past, but he was cleared of all wrongdoing. And I believe that Usman was also cleared of all wrongdoing. It's very convenient that these fighters in that camp have a history of testing positive, but then being cleared, man. Right? There's nothing wrong with what you did. Meanwhile, Nick Diaz being banned for 5 years because he smoked weed. Woo! Right? The rules obviously apply the same to everyone in this sport. It's fantastic. Let's not forget when Jeff Novinsky pretty much called a press conference so that he could explain why Islam Makhachev tested positive and why it was a colossal error in anti-doping, right? And Jeff Novinsky, right, the same one who claimed that John Jones was 100% clean while he was, quote-unquote, pulsing picograms or whatever the fuck nonsense he was spewing to try and defend John Jones. These people have no credibility. So you see, my unfavorable opinions about Dagestani fighters, or certain Dagestani fighters, does not stem from anything to do with where they're from or their religion, right? That's silly. That's silly. It's because they're the most privileged fighters out there, and their cheating has been brushed under the rug time and time again, right? It's just how it is. And it doesn't help that the fans are goofballs and defend every single thing that these fighters do and make up excuses for why they didn't perform to the highest level possible. Dehydration, broken hand, oh, fucking babies.
Absolutely. So after Islam wins the welterweight title, then you can officially declare yourself the #1 lightweight.
After when I will finish this guy, I will call myself I'm the best lightweight.
Man, that would really spell dark times for the lightweight landscape in general if Usman Nurmagomedov, a drug cheat, and also just blatant cheater, like the amount of blatant fouls that he pulled off against Paul Hughes, even without the point deduction, the man should have received more than that, multiple warnings, and the ref was ignoring many of his fouls for the majority of that fight. We're talking about, obviously the nut shots can't really be ignored, but we're talking about hooking the gloves, blatantly holding on to the fence, and nothing from the referee. Usman, if you're the best lightweight in the world, then Jon Jones is the GOAT. And even with the cheating, Paul Hughes should have been given that decision, in my opinion. I thought that he did enough to win that one. You know, obviously, if you know where the fight took place, then you wouldn't be surprised at all to see Usman Nurmagomedov being given that decision. But at best, it was a draw for Usman. At the very, very best, in my opinion. But now let's get on to what Khabib had to say a few days back.
Я не вижу шанса у Топори.
То есть ты считаешь, что Арман нападает, да?
Тоже не дает. Арман слишком дистанционно дерется с ударниками. Держит дистанцию хорошо, ногами лучше работает. И сейчас уже Арман слишком хорошо. У него есть материал, который он может посмотреть и хорошо изучить. Если 3 боя назад, если он с ним дрался, может, он не так опасался.
Выиграет он при этом за счет борьбы, правильно?
За счет ММА стиля.
Но
это не вольная борьба.
Но будет проходить, да?
Арман может повалить, у него хорошие локти в партере. Очень хорошие локти. Они такие у него, хорошо заходят. Может бороться, разбаривать, спину забирать.
А вот в эту опасную дистанцию с Топурией просто не зайдет.
Не зайдет, слишком уже есть бои, он уже может посмотреть, изучить. Если в начале где-то они как-то дрались бы, может быть, у него был бы шанс. Я, например, 80-20, я вижу победителем.
Now, of course, Khabib's a great mind for the sport. He absolutely is. He knows what he's talking about, obviously. He's Khabib Nurmagomedov, and he's a top 20 great of the sport, you would say. Absolutely. Some people put him in the top 10, whatever. But do I believe that he's also capable of letting his biases get in the way of his predictions? Yes, I do. And I think in this case, talking about Arman Tsarukyan as if his striking is too good for Ilia, he's just too good at keeping distance with his kicks, man. The guy gets cracked clean in every one of his fights. He was put on jelly legs by, was it Joaquin Silva, of all people, another short notice opponent? Arman has shown anything but the ability to keep the fight at range. Who has he fought who's a puncher like Ilia Topuria, or as technical of a striker that Ilia Topuria is, or even at the level that Ilia Topuria is? And on the point about tape, right, there's so much to watch and study on Ilia. Yeah, there's a lot to study on Arman Tsarukyan as well. Maybe not recently because he's been sitting out for over a fucking year begging for a title shot. Now, of course, he could get it done with the wrestling for sure. Like, Arman is a great wrestler. 100% he is, of course. But Ilia Topuria is a fantastic wrestler in his own right. Like, look at how we dealt with Charles Oliveira in that one grappling exchange that they had. Reverses him, gets him in a crucifix. Obviously, it didn't last very long, and then Charles attacked a leg lock, and then Ilia decided to stand up because it just wasn't worth the risk, obviously, in that moment. But Ilia is no slouch, and I feel like Khabib Nurmagomedov, because of Ilia's last few results, has simply forgotten about the wrestling pedigree that Ilia possesses himself. But I do agree that Arman is the best matchup against Ilia in terms of the most exciting fight to make. It makes so much sense to do Arman versus Ilia, but this sudden push to make Arman the next challenger against Ilia Topuria, even though he squandered his chance against Islam. And the same fans who were shitting all over Arman say, "Oh, brother, you duck him. You duck Islam, brother." And now they're saying, "Oh, Ilia duck Arman," even though Arman hasn't fought one time since he pulled out of that fight against Islam and essentially washed the main event. The main event was washed at that point, right? The main event did not matter at that point. Islam ended up going up against like the number 10 or 11 ranked lightweight. And then we had to act like we were impressed by it, right? But Arman has not even fought since then. The man's competing in like fucking grappling competitions. Yes, Arman, I'm sure that's going to put you in prime position to fight for a belt, right? Competing in grappling competitions. Ooh, wow. Good job, man. You're really setting yourself apart from the competition. Even though he was offered a fight, apparently against Gamrot, a rematch, right? To get that one back. Because even though a lot of people, including myself, think that Arman won that fight, he was given the opportunity to get that one back. And he refused. So Arman's ducking, Ilia's ducking, Islam's ducking, right? UFC 2025, everyone's ducking. Hey, let's not forget that apparently Merab was ducking Umar as well, and then, fast forward to what actually happened during the fight. But with these Nurmagomedovs, it seems like they'll do anything to try and discredit or downplay Ilia. And also Merab at times too, like they were doing that quite a bit in the lead up to the Merab fight and trying to push for it, rally for it, call him a duck, this and that, saying that he's scared to fight Umar. These fighters are clearly very biased, potentially against Georgian fighters. Obviously, we know that there is some kind of a rivalry between the two, whether it be down to religion or otherwise. I'm not too sure what it stems from, but I would imagine it would come down to religion. That does seem to be the root of most fucking conflicts in this world and all throughout history, really. So it would make sense. But I do find it very interesting how these humble brothers become pretty brash and outspoken when it comes to Ilia Topuria specifically. I think they're very threatened by him. I don't think they like the way he talks, the way that he carries himself, his confidence. I believe that they're threatened by him. And Khabib specifically, I think he tries to downplay Ilia Topuria because he's been in the sport for such a short amount of time. But what he's done is kind of unprecedented. And quite frankly, his resume has already surpassed the likes of Khabib. So it would make sense that he would try and downplay Ilia because he's all about being undefeated, brother, the best of all time, brother. And then you have Ilia, who just comes in the sport real quick, knocks out fucking Volk, knocks out Max Holloway, knocks out Charles Oliveira, and just surpasses you in such a short amount of time. I get why that would be a little bit frustrating from the perspective of Khabib, who spent like 10 years in the UFC and fought 16 times in those 10 years. Yeah, man, he was pretty inactive and honestly very fortunate with his matchmaking. But it's neither here nor there. But that does conclude my thoughts on the Nurmagomedovs being straight haters of Ilia Topuria, man. These guys hate Ilia, but I think it's hilarious. I love it. I love how he gets under their skin so easily just by existing. I think it's hilarious the way he gets under the fans' skin. These people just really hate Ilia Topuria. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.